Hi, this is Michael Hart. This presentation will go over schema theory, or in other words, building mental maps. The past connects to the present. When we enter into a new learning situation or environment, we use a process of interaction between what we already know and what we want to learn. We are always using what we know to interpret what we don't know. We refer to past knowledge to help learn future knowledge. So think about any new situation that you went into and had no prior knowledge of it. It can be rather unnerving to enter a new situation like that and not have any prior experience with that. If we can't link new content to something we already know, learning is much more difficult. This becomes even more apparent with online learning. Remember, not all students have experience with online learning, and thus they're entering into a new learning situation with no experience to link it to. This is an example of attacking new knowledge without having the proper mental model or map. Read the following paragraph and try to understand it. Had enough time? I'll give you 10 more seconds. Okay, you should have had enough time to try to read at least half the paragraph. I'm going to move on now. So sit back for a second and try to explain to yourself what this paragraph was about. Does it make sense? When you read it, did it become clear to you what the author was trying to get across? When I first read it, I had no clue. A schema or mental map, even though you recognize every word in the paragraph that we just read, you probably don't understand it. This passage is used to demonstrate the power of schemas or mental maps. The name for the way we construct mental maps of information in long-term memory is a schema. The passage is using a schema or mental map that most people have not experienced or would even imagine experiencing. So you read it to you. You find nothing in your long-term memory that you can use to interact with the information in the passage. But if I give you a schema for the passage, I guarantee that passage will be much easier to understand. So to the left, you'll find a schema or mental map that can be used to interpret the paragraph of nonsense you just read. Take a moment and study the picture. Okay, you've had a moment to study the picture. Let's move back to the paragraph and see if the paragraph makes more sense based upon what you know about this picture. So after viewing the mental map or schema, read the paragraph again. Okay, the text should make more sense now. By giving that image, that provided a mental map for you to actually digest, interpret, and learn what this passage meant. So what does it all mean? Understanding something depends on our having experiences stored in long-term memory that can interact with the new information presented in a learning situation. So linking our prior knowledge or our old knowledge to what we are about to learn is always the first type of thinking we use when acquiring new knowledge. And if we don't have prior knowledge of something, it makes it much harder to try to interpret and digest new material. So, how to build mental maps with online courses. First, label descriptive information with your learning content. You'll see on my week 1 interactive strategies I have a small paragraph that actually outlines what this week is about. So it gives a student a mental map about what they're going to be doing. Use descriptive words to name learning objects. You'll see in my student lounge folder, I have it called Let's Support Each Other. Just using the word support tells a student that this is a place to receive help from each other. Provide a list of deliverables or learning goals before each unit. The learning goals you see below allow the student to preload the content and what they need to do to learn that content. And these tasks that you, or learning goals that you line out, should be linked or lined up with your unit of instruction. Use formative tests or quizzes. It can be as simple as 5 questions that provide a quick assessment on key learning goals. This serves to preload content for students and also allows students to measure their own knowledge of the topic. You see below is a starting point survey. It's a small survey that will basically give the student a pre-assessment on basic biological knowledge. It'll let the student know where they stand with the content and also allow them to kind of preload the content in their mental map, so when they actually are presented with the content, they'll be able to refer back to this pre-test within their mental map. And finally, build a story or narrative with your learning content. You'll see below I have a welcome to my module 2. I try to create a narrative story that allows a student to have a beginning and an end. Whenever you approach new material, students always look for the beginning, or the entry point, and they look for the middle, and they look for the end, which usually is the assessment piece. And I always try to line up an essential question for the module. In other words, what do I want my students to be able to do or know when they are done with my course? What are the essentials? And fini, this is the end of this presentation.